welcome to the Q&R Code podcast. I am one of the co-host twins, Quinn. On the other side is Riley, and we want to say happy Tuesday to you. As you know, last week I was freezing cold because it was a very cold day, and I did confirm that, in fact, my heat did go out of my whole house. So we live in an old farmhouse, and I will try to be handy about some things, but I was not about to try to attempt the heating situation. I don't know even a little bit where to begin, but what I do know is I was holding my hand up to the heater. We have the, I don't know what it's even called, but like the floorboard heating situation, holding my hand up around the house, feeling, and there was nothing. So that's why I was bundled up literally as snug as a bug in a rug. And finally, Sean got home, and I asked him, "What do you think? What should we do? I'm freezing cold." And he went down to the basement, which, once again, I don't want to ever do that. So I figured there might be something in the basement to have to be dealt with. That is his job, not mine. And the pilot light was out, which I know zero about. And so at 8 or later o'clock at night, our landlord had to come over and fix the situation. Unfortunately, it was taking him a very long time. So, moral of the story, I am still freezing in my house, and now it's the nighttime, and my landlord is home, who I don't exactly have a cozy, fuzzy relationship with. And so I felt, what else is there to do than for me to make the best out of this situation? And I cuddled up on my couch with multiple blankets layered on top of me. Thank goodness the Wi-Fi wasn't out. And decided I went on to Peacock because that's where we've been watching Traders. And also I went there because Riley and I both discovered last week that unfortunately our Netflix account is no longer supporting our use. We obviously are on our parents' account. I don't know, I'm not a rich 25-year-old. Yes, I use my parents' Netflix account. And Riley and I both discovered that it finally caught up to us that it's saying our devices aren't associated with the Netflix account, which is incredibly frustrating, and that is a situation we are going to have to figure out, particularly with a new season of Love is Blind being out, and we have no way to watch it. But I figured, okay, so Peacock is my streaming service, and the Real Housewives franchise popped up on my recommended to watch. So, for the first time ever, I started watching The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, just curled up with my blankets up to my chin, and the beanie I was wearing pulled all the way down over my ears because it was 0 degrees inside, and watched 3 full episodes of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City while my landlord and my husband were down in the basement for hours trying to figure out getting a pilot light lit together. So anyhow, wanted to give that update, and the heat is back on and kicking. We are doing well, and now I'm watching The Real Housewives, so thought that was important information.
Well, welcome. And also,
Thank you.
You were so right for feeling vindicated and being so very cold, and I'm glad that the heating situation was sorted out. However, you never want a long visit from the landlord. It's like, get in and get out. I don't know what the issue was that was taking longer, but I am shocked that Sean was downstairs with him that whole time, because when somebody comes over to do work at my place, I'm like, here that is, thank you, and make myself scarce.
Yeah, I felt so, it's clearly very small fish and not a big deal, but the whole day had gone so weird with my everything. I swear it did. Just the day felt very weird with the fact that I was freezing cold inside, actually shivering for the entire hours of the whole day. And so the timing was weird. Sean got home late from work. It was just not the ideal situation. So I hadn't started cooking dinner or anything, and where my basement is close to my kitchen, and I just didn't want to be in there and having a conversation, and I just was like, no, please. So I ended up just eating super late. It was weird. Sean said he wanted to be downstairs with him, and I'm like, okay, if you want to do that, clearly you go for it. I want nothing to do with that. And I pulled myself as comfortable on the couch, as out of sight as I could be, for when they came back upstairs, and just had my AirPods in because I'm like, what would be way more comfortable? Obviously, not having my AirPods in, but I don't need you snooping in on what I'm doing. And the last thing I need is judgment from a 60-year-old man being like, what is she watching for hours? I'm like, you know what I usually wouldn't be doing? Right here, bundled up into the nighttime, watching this for hours, which there's no problem if I would. But I would usually be getting my routine done, like have eaten food. So it was just a wonky situation, and I'm glad that that was rectified. I do feel very uncomfortable about the position you and I are in with our Netflix accounts, though.
I just think it's yet another example of corporate greed knowing no bounds. I'm like, this isn't even a situation of like having a friend's password login. We are actually a family. We did actually all live under one roof up until recently. I'm like, much more of my life than not.
Yes.
This is ridiculous. It's not like they are suffering over at Netflix for not having another open account, and I'm certainly not wanting to pay for that. I also, I'm like, just don't. Why are you cracking down like this? Not cool at all.
I really thought that we had evaded the situation because everyone I know that had talked about this said that this was like a year ago plus that people were like, well, there goes my Netflix account. I heard so many people saying this so long ago that I was, for months waiting, being like, oh, nothing has happened to mine, nothing has happened to mine. And I thought, okay, well, we're good. I don't know. The good grace has fallen upon us and we get our Netflix account. But Netflix has been my one true ride or die streaming service because that's what we've just always had. And it doesn't have ads, the one we use. I didn't even know there was an option. Riley has now done the investigative research to figure out what does this look like for us to buy an account. And I didn't even know there was an ad option. Riley, what we really need to do is look into the Peacock situation because people have told me that Peacock without ads is so, so, so cheap. And our ads, that drives me absolutely crazy. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that because when I looked into it, it was significantly more expensive, but we can check. But I'm like, I like having Peacock. Quinn and I have not even had it a year yet because we just like there was a promo and we decided to get it. And it's nice having those shows, but it obviously doesn't have like the breadth of Netflix, and now I'm just feeling like I'm getting like picked off of these streaming services one by one because we also used to have access to Max, aka HBO, through our phone provider, like our cellular, and then they must have like cut their deal or whatever because I was going on there and that is no longer an option. And now no Netflix, and people might say, oh, get your own account, pay for that. I don't want to pay for all these streaming services. I just want to have access to them. And then the other day, I tried to log into Hulu, and the person's account that I am using, again, a family member, not like just a rando. I'm like, we are family. We should be able to share and be on the same account. And they like hadn't paid that month or whatever, so maybe that's gonna be back up, but I couldn't have access to that, and I was just really feeling like, wow, okay. So I am truly, we're going to have to go down the road of genuine homesteaders, no entertainment
Yeah,
anymore.
we're going back to just books. Just books and a deck of cards, getting really good at shuffling, doing card tricks. That's
Full
the
Little
level
House on the
we're at.
Prairie.
Yeah. Sewing all of my own dresses, which would be sick, but unfortunately, we still have capitalism to attend to. So I would love if it was like, oh, yeah, actually, you know what? We'll just embrace the off grid lifestyle. My rent, the rent check that's due every month hasn't changed. My duties to be part of the workforce haven't changed. I unfortunately just can't, I don't have the privilege of doing the hard work lifestyle that comes with being a full time homesteader. I don't envy in some ways, but in some ways, if I can't have Netflix, I might as well be a full time homesteader. But that's just not how things are shaping up for me. And anyway, it's a crisis.
Yeah, we'll see TBD on working around that, but I do have another watch report, which is a circle back to a movie that we watched in our youth, which is Little Manhattan, that has young Josh Hutcherson in it. Brayden and I, for Valentine's Day, just wanted to stay in and have a mellow night. We ordered in Thai food. I had baked us a absolutely delicious, decadent, salted chocolate tart. Very nice, rich.
It looked
You,
lovely.
thank you. You can imagine. And
It was also
when
ginormous, which I was thinking when you told me tart, I, for whatever reason, was thinking just like a little personal sized, but it was like pie cake sized.
oh yes, it's a 9-inch tart pan.
Nice.
I don't have the little personal tart pans, a little tartlet, if you will, but that would be
Yeah.
a delight also. Maybe I will invest down the line. But our grandma, when we were kids, got us the DVD of Little Manhattan for a Valentine's Day that she sent us like a bunch of little Valentine's candies with, which was so cute. And then that kind of became a tradition to watch. And so I wanted to watch it with Brayden. It had been years and years since I'd seen it, and it was so cute and just nostalgic. But that movie is adorable, and it is like about kids like 10 and 11 and a love story, but it's very just like sweet and told from the boy's perspective of just like being so heartsick. And I would recommend if you're looking for a just sweet movie to see.
It has such a cute soundtrack too. That always stuck out to me. And the scootering always reminds me of Riley. Riley and I being sharing a little razor scooter together.
Yeah, but it does give me anxiety then and now that he is absolutely ripping across New York City on the scooter with no helmet. That kid has to have a helmet on.
Yeah. I don't know. I have so little perspective on what it would be like to be a child growing up in a city because to me that always I never thought a thing of us scootering, but now to think of a child doing it through a busy city. I have seen children on the like bird scooters, the powered fast legit scooters, and I'm like I am scared of that. I feel there's got to be an age restriction there. clearly they have to be old enough to be able to see over the handlebars, but I've seen some people that I'm like, you are seeming too young for the responsibility of the speed that this can maintain.
Yeah, I, of course, don't know the first thing about parenting a child in a city, but I am petrified. And watching the movie too, I'm like, I don't know if this is realistic or not, but I can't imagine just letting your 10-year-old be in New York City on their own, unsupervised. This is also like before cell phones. Not that that makes that much of a difference, but at least you can like track them or there could be a call. I don't know. I would just be terrified. He's not looking both ways before going across the street. He is just ripping around
He's
and
drunk in love. He can't even focus.
he really
Poor little
can't.
guy.
Rosemary.
I remember, I haven't seen it in so long either, but I remember just the heart wrenching, just the heartache of it all. But I had
The other
another
thing.
update.
Oh, go ahead then.
You share first.
This is a viewing on Instagram. I wrote down his name so I didn't forget, but have you seen Gary Brotherson and his dance videos?
I have no idea.
I don't know because I didn't know the name until I looked, but I've seen a few of his reels and they are just cracking me up. He's like a middle-aged, on the older end of middle-aged. No offense to Gary, this is just a description. A white man that does little dance vids and absolutely throws it down in his living room. Like, I think he did one of his dances too to you man loosen up my buttons, baby, cause you keep running. Anyway, he
Nice.
does like, I would say TikTok style dances, but more full out, honestly, than a lot of TikTok dancers. Like, I don't think he's doing choreographed dances that like are going viral, at least not that I've noticed. I think they're just his little dance vids, but they have been bringing me joy, so I would recommend checking him out.
Okay. Searching Gary.
Yeah, Gary Brotherson.
Gary Brotherson. Okay, I will put that on my to do.
I preemptively just don't want this to sound elitist or to yuck anyone else's yums, but we, you guys know, grew up in a granola household and we were not eating spam. That was not part of our family's repertoire, and our mom being a vegetarian especially hated the idea of that. And just culturally, that wasn't really in our purview either. It's not like I saw it at friend's house. It was just not really part of our life. Flash forward to dating Brayden. Again, it wasn't until years into our relationship when he suddenly took a liking to spam masube, which, for those of you that don't know, you like slice spam, fry it, and then have it with like rice and some nori wrapped around like a little sushi sandwich situation. This week, he comes home from Costco, mind you, with 2 sleeves of spam. And this is from Costco, so I'm pretty sure that that in total is like 16 cans. I'm like, okay, why did you think that we needed not only a bulk amount of spam ever for the two of us, but 2 of those bulk containers of spam?
Can of spam is large? That's more than one serving? Like what? Give me context about a can of spam.
I mean,
Is it one
again,
serving?
no. I don't know how people normally eat Spam, but it would be a lot to have one full can. Like, it's very salty. It's like a highly salted processed meat that a can is like a good amount. I just was like floored that he thought that he should buy multiple of those. I'm like, whoa. First of all, in what context do we need all of this at once? And second of all, yeah, if you ever wanted Spam, you can just get a can at the store. I couldn't conceive of it because the Spam Musube is the one thing that I've ever known him to make with it. We don't eat it in another context, and that happens like once a year or so. I just don't know. I'm like, when are we gonna start using this, and what possessed you? And he was like, oh, but it's sriracha flavored, or no, it's gochujang flavored. I'm like, Mmm. That
So
changes things.
therefore, it feels like one sleeve would be right on the money.
Yeah, that was just a little shocking to me because you never know when you send a man to the grocery store. You just hope for the best in general. And he generally does a pretty good job, pretty efficient, sticks to the list. But that was just so like, wow, okay. I would have made a different choice. I don't know why that was so exciting to you when you saw that.
Brayden does get particularly excited about canned items, and especially he loves a canned fish situation. I don't really know what Spam is, and I think it's one of those things that, like Riley said, we just culturally missed out on, and I don't think that any food should be really talked about with a stigma of like, that's gross or anything, but I just don't really know what it is or understand it. I understand that it's some sort of fat situation or something. Like, I know it's an animal product, and I know that that isn't the Spam Musube thing, isn't that kind of a Hawaiian thing slash also a Japanese thing? I don't know.
Yes, it's a Hawaiian dish, and Spam is very like popular and common in Hawaiian cooking because, I mean, I won't say as if I really understood the history of it, but when Hawaii got colonized and we started extracting a lot of their food to be shipped away, like Hawaii is a huge producer of food that then is taken away from their island, and losing that source of food, there needed to be another source of food brought in, and Spam is incredibly cheap and non like perishable and things like that. So that was brought in as like an affordable replacement for some of the things that were no longer available to the locals, and so it became part of like local cuisine, and they make like Spam fried rice and Spam musube and stuff. And so I know that it is like more of a staple in different Hawaiian cooking, but again, it's not to put like negative value on a food. It's just a very highly processed animal byproduct food that is not very nutrient dense, and it is very salty, and yeah, it's not I think that there could be a whole podcast dedicated to the effects of like colonization on different food, and it is interesting in the way that like people make it work with stuff, but Spam is definitely known for being just like a very cheap ingredient.
The reason Brayden is so excited about it is because he's on his FIRE. If you're new to the podcast, when we say FIRE, we are meaning financial independence, retire early practices that he's probably like, oh, look at this. This is a treat that I like, and it's so cost effective. And that was his boy math being like, let's buy a lot of it.
Yes. But then on the other hand, we care so much about like sourcing our meat as locally as possible and doing the best that we can to eat sustainably and locally. I'm like, that just shows that it is about consistency rather than perfection, because that certainly goes against those principles.
Well, Sean and I, for Valentine's Day, we had a fun night. We ended up watching the episode of The Traders that came out, and update about how I feel about Tom Sandoval. I thought that that was so funny. I Riley and I are starting to record the podcast a little bit early and in advance, so by the time you listen to this, there might be one more episode of Traders out, but we watched the episode where they did the listening to a doll and having to convey the nursery rhyme, and I was like, okay, this is the most likable Tom Sandoval has been this whole episode, I thought, or this whole season. I was like, I think that that was legitimately funny, and he was just cracking me up. And I'm like, okay, he does have a likable, there are definitely, I have thought he's been funny multiple times throughout, but of course, when you know someone for the fact that they cheated in a horrible way on someone, it makes, it puts a bad taste in one's mouth. But I did think that that was very hilarious and was like rooting him on.
Yeah, that cracked me up though, how he was like, I'm the only one that has any sort of a musical ear. I'm like, bro.
But I mean, hey, it all got across to them. So
Yeah.
they ended up figuring it out. I'm like, that's legit. And no one else was trying. So you got to give him props for that.
He did accomplish the mission. I now just know what it feels like to be someone that like watched channels on TV rather than only ever streaming, because now we're having to wait to see the show once a week, and I'm like, ugh. I just want to be able to finish it off, but this is a good thing, I guess, pacing ourselves, but I am not used to it, and add the ads on top of it, and we're really getting the full TV experience.
Yeah, the amount of ads in the middle is really hard for me to stomach because it just feels like I see why they do it, obviously, but I'm like, literally do 5 minutes of it at first and then don't keep interrupting the episode. Obviously, I understand, but the ad for like Sky Rizzy, Sean and I were like, that is the most hilarious medication name, that they named something Sky Rizzy. You know that that's like really sticking with the youths to be like, okay, I I don't know. It just feels like
Also,
that is a
not their
trendy, that's like giving trendy.
not their jingle being control means everything to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't feel right about pharmaceuticals being able to advertise like this in a lot of countries. They are not. Clearly, America takes capitalism to a whole nother level, and that's something that Brayden also feels strongly about, that advertising medications is not a good idea. And if there's anything about me, even though I do know the Sky Resi jingle because I've had to hear it a few times recently, but if I have the option, mute as soon as the ads come on, even if I'm gonna like sit there and see them play through because I'm like posted up on the couch or whatever, I will be muting it if it's at all in my control. I don't want to hear it. It just ruins my vibe, takes me out of my TV experience, and then when it's counting down and it's like 2 seconds to the program about to start again, I turn the volume back on.
Yeah, it does just pollute the airspace, and it's always so alarming with all of those medications that I'm like, clearly it might be the right thing for someone, and I definitely think there are medications worth taking, but I know there are potential side effects with all drugs, but it's always so scary to hear their lines where they're like, yeah, and this could cause extreme pain and potentially immediate death and suicidal thoughts and just like a list of 14 extremely severe potential side effects. And I'm like, wow, yeah, that's really hard when you're put in the place medically that you need or feel like a drug might be. I don't even remember honestly what Skyrizi is for, so that shows you how good the commercial is. But I'm like, that's so sad to be put in a place where you're feeling like you have to make a decision for your life that potentially has such negative consequences, but also might have life-saving benefits. Anyhow, yeah, I don't like those amount of ads. It just back to back to back. Yeah, it's a lot.
It just really does make you feel like a Black Mirror moment where it's like fast food advertising like such a crazy like combo deal, and then a pharmaceutical company trying to sell you on something, and then it's like kids applesauce, and you're like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
This is something that I don't even really know. I don't have my finger on the exact dot of how I've been feeling, but vulnerability is the name of the game on this podcast, so I figured I'd just share with you guys that recently I have been feeling just not that fire. I don't know the better way to say it. I have not felt like super strong and resilient, and obviously I know that I am resilient, and there are like things that can be a counter example to that, but I think that it's so normal to go through a period of time and like cycles throughout your life where you're just not feeling like that, and it can be so degrading because all the messaging is that like that's the right thing to be. Like it's good to be strong and like have a lot of grit and have this like determination and go get 'em attitude and like not stopping and always like grinding it out and whatnot. And so then when you're feeling in a lull, it can almost make you feel worse because you're like, I know that this is like the antithesis of what you're supposed to be and what's like an admirable way to be, but that is just, for me, not like a sustainable state of always being in. And of course there are times where I feel like really passionate and stuff, but there are so many reasons in life that things come up for you to not feel that way, especially like coming off of a sickness and even being away from Quinn and having these things that I'm like that make me feel a little less myself, and like things are harder, and just not really even looking for a solution because I know that times like that come and go, but I just think that that's important to sometimes know as an antidote to what we hear, because I just feel like so much of what I see is like, if you're not like always like bringing your max, then you're doing a disservice to yourself and like wasting potential. And it's like, okay, well, sometimes I'm not like constantly maximizing my potential, I guess.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it is vulnerable to share about, and I'm proud of you because I think for us, we are people that definitely tend toward just really being stoked on positivity, and we are very invested in our pursuit of happiness and maximizing our lives and romanticizing our lives. And I'm proud of us for how well this winter has gone when, plenty of people struggle through the winter with the blues. And I feel like we have had a very strong and productive and a big push this season. And yeah, I mean, you were taken out by sickness for 2 weeks, which just feeling lousy and being out of your routine to that degree where you're in physical pain and you don't feel like yourself and you can't really, for you weren't even being able to like hydrate or eat food hardly. And all of that impacts you so much. So to come out of something like that, it takes time to get back into your routine and to feel like you're truly thriving again. And then even if it's not that you don't have something you can exactly point to for, oh, this is why I'm feeling this way. It is true that that's just in life, and I think some people have it more than others, but there are lulls that you I think it's so important to have the stuff that we have talked about of having important goals that really matter to you and having a positive outlook and trying to maintain a good mood when you can and be resilient when you can. But that's a practice that is always evolving, and that I think is important to have in your back pocket and know, hey, I when I need to dig really deep, I can get back there, but sometimes you have to in life accept if you're just not feeling in the best spirits and something is getting you down. There are so many reasons why it can feel like life is incredibly overwhelming and that you're maybe not maximizing your potential or whatever. I think that I'm so grateful for and really care about our talks on the Q&R code about that type of just being inspired and being optimistic and loving life, because I think that is a representation of how you and I feel and choose to carry ourselves through life. But it also comes with there are serious hard emotions, and sometimes you really can't exactly point to it, but I totally understand there being those slumps. And I think it is hard with the culture that, like we've talked about a little bit, it feels like Gen Z is kind of breaking out of more so than millennials that were so much the grind culture and era. But I still feel those pressures so much, and that is something I've had a huge crisis with recently. Is you and I were raised by a hyper productive people that are like, with our mom, she's an extreme perfectionist and is hyper productive, and we were raised around not only with our parents, just around a lot of highly successful people, that there is just such this pressure of feeling like your performance has to do with your worth and your amount of hours that you're clocking working at work, quote unquote, has to do with your worth. And you and I used to And still, at times, we're trying to work through this, but overwork ourselves to the point of just complete burnout and exhaustion and existential crisis. And I think it's a effect you and I are having that now if we feel less extreme productivity and it's like, wow, this has been sitting on my to-do list for a while now and still hasn't been checked off. Like, I think we can harbor a lot of guilt and feelings of not being accomplished and not feeling as proud of ourselves. And you and I have both been feeling in the place of really caring to rewrite that narrative. And that's something that I've gone through personally recently, was having to take a break from work and reevaluate. And again, clearly it wasn't, we talk about work in our society as something you're getting paid for, which is really frustrating because I would say a large majority of the work that so many people do, and sometimes women, not all women or most women, but a lot of times women working in the house, even if you're not a stay-at-home person, but working hard to do the chores, do the laundry, care for the animals, care for the kids, literally change the bed sheets while you're at the same time cooking dinner, while you're at the same time thinking of who else you need to feed, and you need to go do your full shower, and etc., etc. And that stuff isn't seen and taken as seriously as clocking hours. And I have had to do a very structured pullback and try to rewrite that narrative for myself, but I have had lots of moments of that feeling too, that low feeling and slump kind of feeling like, is this like I'm having to replace my worth outside of my productivity clocking hours in the corporate world. Anyhow, I took that on such a tangent, and I don't know if that's even exactly where your feelings are placed, but I just want you to know that that's so fair, and I think it's important for us to be able to discuss having those feelings too, even though we are girls with generally sunshiny dispositions. Of course, it's just not realistic in life to feel like, oh, but it's all sunshine and rainbows. Don't let the clouds come. Don't let people see the drops of rain. Like, there is a balance that's so important to acknowledge.
It's something that we all know, but sometimes if you're not like seeing that side of other people, it's harder and like lonelier to feel like, oh, why am I feeling this way? But clearly people aren't just all one way, and it would be disingenuous to act like, yeah, like I just feel that motivation all the time. But it's also not like when I'm feeling this way that it's like the world is just gray. Like I still feel like I every day notice a lot of the same things that I would always notice, of like, oh, look at that lovely bird, and it's so like gratifying to go and be with my chickens and have those moments. It's not like when you're, I think, feeling this way, it can maybe seem like, oh, so you're either like joyless or doing so well, and that's, I do not think, indicative of what the human experience is like. It's obviously like up and down and side to side, and from moment to moment things are different, and you're still like getting this stuff done that you need to do. It just can sometimes be where you're feeling like, gosh, it's just a day after day, and then, you know, within that there are days where you're like, I am feeling inspired, but there are so many things that go into it, and especially with everything happening in the world right now, I think that I have just been trying so hard to be like, but just be like optimistic and like find the joy in it, because it's not productive to just let it get you down. But you're like, but this shit does get me down. And that is a normal reaction to have to seeing like some of what's going on go on, and that doesn't mean that that's gonna like stop you in your tracks and that like everything is for nothing. It's just part of it for me, and I also don't have like pressure on myself to have it all figured out, because it's like I just think that this is going to be a part of life, but who knows, maybe as I get older and learn more about the world and experience more and have different coping skills, maybe things won't feel like as low of lows, but also they probably still will. I just feel like that's just kind of a part of things, and that's okay. But thank you for being in on it with us, and I don't think that we normally give like toxic positivity vibes either. I think that it's a good thing, and I feel better when I'm feeling more in my default setting of like more joyful and excitable and whatever. Like I prefer that, and I'm definitely not going to be like that's being fake, because that's just as real of a feeling and the life experience to me as then having other times that don't feel quite as sunshiny either.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it shouldn't take away from all of those strong feelings of joy and that consistency. And I think something you said that's so worthwhile is yes, there are periods of time for people that feel more low or like more of a lull, but sometimes it so is moment to moment. And I think that goes along with our a recent episode we had about labels, that to fully label yourself and say I am depressed might feel a little bit hard to reckon with, because for me, as someone that has been diagnosed with depression, I don't feel like depression is everything I am. I definitely feel depression in my life, but I so often feel so much joy that I don't want to feel defined by. And that's something I think in high school I really struggled with, was I was coming to terms with this new, what felt like an identity, because of having some of these diagnoses actually happen, that I felt like, oh well, now I remember an instance where someone in one of my classes was like, you are just like so, you're always so happy and you're so joyful and funny. And it was like an acquaintance, and I remember being so frustrated and being like, okay, well, I have depression and you're just like perceiving me this way when you don't know. And now, of course, looking back on this instance, it's so funny that I felt like such a moody teenager, but I remember just feeling so frustrated, like, okay, well, I don't want to be giving that vibe that I'm just so happy and so loving life, when actually I am so sad girl, crying in my journal every single day, like having terrible thoughts and not feeling that, and just felt like, wow, I'm upset. I'm upset by this, and that this person would think that about me when I'm going through such hard things. But now, clearly, I have a lot more understanding about the nuance of feelings, and that it's so normal for even a very depressed person to say, or a person that's whatever. You know what I mean? Um, to be really funny and really nice and seeming positive and have that vibe. Even this is where, again, I think we can get things wrong sometimes, as people will say, like, oh yeah, but they hid it so well, or you never would have known. Where I think that could be true, that some people are actually hiding and trying not to let other people in on their sadness. But I also think that a lot of people are just have multiple feelings going on at once. And like Riley said, it can be so moment to moment where maybe I don't generally feel as down out and about in public, or when I have my the rare times I'm hanging out with friends and stuff. I feel that we do probably have more resilience than a lot of people were raised with. That's something I've been thinking about recently, is our parents raised us with a lot of resilience, that we would go through moments of something really hard and heavy. And I feel so lucky that we learned from such an early age that that doesn't have to define our whole day or our whole week or just who we are. And that's obviously something I then wrestled with in high school, because I'm like, okay, maybe I'm resiliencing a little too close to the sun, that you just think I'm just this la-di-da sunshiny girl, when actually I am having depression, and I drew a face with a bunch of tears and X's out of the eyes, and in big scratchy letters was like, I hate this life. But you're thinking I'm so happy and sunshiny. We do have a lot of resilience. And Riley, even if you're feeling right now like you're not feeling that as much, I think I have seen so many people in life that the way their days, weeks, month, year is affected by a negative thing, a lot of people don't have the resilience to come back from that and feel like, oh, I can still have positive moments in my day, and I am really enjoying this cup of coffee. And clearly, when tragedy happens, I'm not saying it's even the better thing to. You should be able to live in your hardship in the way that feels right for you. I don't have the solution, but for me personally, I feel lucky because I know, Riley, even when you're going through your lulls and harder times, you still have so many moments of joy and interest and excitement and curiosity that I think you can still give yourself a lot of credit for and celebrate.
Thanks, buddy. I agree. It's important to give yourself grace and be like, I don't always have to be like this warrior figure. And I feel like, especially for women, it can sometimes feel, even though it's acted sometimes like women are not as strong, it's actually like such a prized thing that when people talk about like their moms and like praise women so often, they're like, she was like the strongest woman I know and stuff, which is amazing. And I believe it, because women are so strong and resilient and able to like navigate some like things that would seem like unspeakable to go through. But also it's like, it's okay to not always be in that mentality, because that's just exhausting. And I have been thinking about single moms, especially, I mean, any moms, but just being sick, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I were feeling this way and like had a child relying on me and was the sole earner for this household that was probably living paycheck to paycheck, like so many of us have to be in this world, and whatever, it would just be like so hard to get on top of, and I can understand why you can't even like let yourself go there mentally almost, because it's like feels like such a precarious house of cards. And I just wish that like our mental health didn't have to be that precarious, where you're allowed to just like go through those normal feelings and not feel like everything will fall away if you do. And I think that's a good practice to try to cultivate for yourself, to show that like if you miss, like if you have those bumps in the road, that doesn't mean that you're gonna just go completely off course. Just like with a goal, if you're headed towards a goal but you miss some of your steps, and like you were supposed to hit this benchmark and you didn't, or you're doing something weekly and you miss, that doesn't have to like derail your entire thing. You can always like pick that back up and start again. And that, I don't know, it's just as much for myself as for any of you to say, because I've felt derailed by some different things out of my control recently. But I'm like, listen, it's frustrating and it makes me feel off track, and it is like hard to regain momentum that is lost. And so then it's even like doubly frustrating. However, that does not mean like everything is over, and chances are once the dust settles, it'll be like, okay, deep breath, I feel fine, things are good, we're back on again. But if you like get derailed and then don't like get back into your routine or towards your goals or whatever those things are, that's where I feel like it can and has for me. I am not saying that this is something I am above, because I am not. That's why I'm making a concerted effort to get back into my flow, because sometimes when those things happen and then it takes you off, then it takes you so far off and so far down that it feels like, wow, it's like a mountain to overcome, instead of just like that was a little bump in the road in the rear view mirror. And those things are normal. And it doesn't have to be like, because I had a bad day, I'm having a bad week, or because I had a bad day at work, I'm having a bad day at home. Like, those are the little resiliencies that I think Quinn was talking about, that can, I think, really make an overall difference in your perspective in the world, and then therefore probably in people's perception of you, where maybe it does feel like, oh, you're so positive, and you're like, yeah, but I'm not always positive. But clearly that like energy that you're putting out towards people makes a difference. And it's not like one is like more virtuous inherently than the other. I just know how it feels for me and others when you're tending towards the positive. So of course that's going to be like my preferred default, but it's not like I'm feeling like, wow, I'm a less valuable person if I'm not like having that same output of energy in a day. That's just too black and white for what life is actually like.
Definitely. Well, I hope that you all are ideally feeling great, but if you're not and you're feeling in a little bit of a lull in this moment or these months, just do try to accept for yourself that it can just be a moment. It can just be a moment in time and in your life. And I'm excited because spring is coming, and as Riley and I have said, we really love the change of the seasons, and that's something that feels really inspiring for us, that we get to see the world changing and just take those little markers as something that can feel exciting and inspiring. So we're proud of you for getting through this year so far. It is the last time we're speaking to you in February, and we're just wishing you the best. And hold on if you are feeling deep in winter with the weather, or maybe you're still feeling those blues. Just know that the birds will be chirping soon, and hopefully there will be some beautiful daffodils blossoming around you, and the green will start coming back into the leaves and everything. I'm really excited about that, and we will get to chat with you all soon, and hope that you just feel supported by us in these conversations, and we're always interested in hearing from you all. If you have anything to say, you can always DM us, you can always comment on our posts, and please make sure to follow us on YouTube if you've yet to do that. Subscribe, as the YouTubers would say, and you can find us on the Q&R code on Instagram as well as TikTok, the Q&R code podcast. And then we're Riley Liliestrom and Quinn Liliestrom on Instagram. And any love on the episode is always appreciated. If you feel like sending this to someone that you think it would resonate with, or if you want to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and download our episodes, that would be super helpful and appreciated.
That's right. Happy end of your month, and we will be talking to you next week. Thanks for being with us. Goodbye.